I'm from New Carlisle, Ohio, and growing up, it was incredible. Everybody pretty much knew everybody. I was one of 6 kids. My dad was the hammer, my mom was the cushion. We ate every night at 5:30 on the spot, or we were dead meat from dad. Mom stayed home and took care of the kids, did the laundry. We went to church every Sunday, we had to. There was no choice in the matter. And you know, like a lot of kids, we were into sports. That was everything for us. I chose to go to Ohio State, and my focus was having fun and working out. I was in the Air National Guard, and then I worked at Papa Joe's, the home of the bucket. One time, it was near the end of my college years, the owner told me, he said, "Hey Francis, come downstairs." No creepy little basement down there. He was buying cocaine. I had never seen cocaine. And so he said, "You want some?" I'm just like, "Nah, I'm okay." And then the next time this happened, you know, I was curious and I tried some. From that point on, the seeds were planted. As soon as I opened up that window, all of these things happened. Somebody introduced me to marijuana, to mushrooms, to acid, to coke, and eventually coke turned into crack.
Over the next several years, Tim sought to feed his party lifestyle in the world of multi-level marketing that promised fast transactions and lucrative payouts, but often to the detriment of personal relationships.
I made $20,000 my first 2 months. I said, "I'm rich." So I moved 3 hours away, opened up a huge office. My brother and his wife, they quit their job. They sold their house. My other brother, my sister, my whole family followed me into the business, but it didn't work out.
Feeling immense pressure, he went to Dallas to help the business out. While there, he met a woman named PK. They became fast friends. Her clean lifestyle was attractive to Tim, but with no sales opportunities developing, he was soon forced to return home.
I was trying to make it in sales, but I was in a party atmosphere. I couldn't function. I wouldn't see my parents. I wouldn't talk to my family. Not going to church, none of that. I had this wound of, I just put my family through this other deal. Like, what an absolute disaster. So during this entire time, my mother and father, make no mistake about it, Dad is a great man. But here's my mom praying and praying and praying. And ever since I left home out of high school, she'd write letters to all of us. And what would the letters say, man? It would always be centered on put God first. Letter from Mom, November 17th, 1995. Dear Tim, I have the feeling you are going 100 miles an hour all the time and think you can't stop to rest. I want to emphasize how important it is for you to relax your mind and refresh yourself. You can make things easier on yourself by spending time with the Lord. When we try to do things on our own without His help, we make it harder. In Scripture, we are told that His ways are not our ways, and His thoughts are not our thoughts. I drove to Texas, not knowing what I'm gonna do. And PK and I reconnected. Now here's a girl that when she was 24, she already built her own house. You know, I'm 24 doing mushrooms and trying to pay my bills. She found out pretty quickly that I had this addiction, and rather than run, she saw something in me and essentially took me out of that environment. She basically said, "Let's figure this out." At that very point, we got invited to a big mega church. And PK had no religious upbringing, none at all. I'd never seen something like this in my life. I'm talking 20,000 people. And we went from the bar scene to the Bible scene overnight. So I called my mom, I said, "Mom, I'm going to church," thinking she's gonna be pumped. And she said, in a very non-judgmental way, "Do they have a mass?" She basically was saying, "Is it Catholic?" Well, why would that matter, Mom? "Well, they don't have the Eucharist." And she was like, "I'm very happy for you that you're seeking Jesus. I just want you to have the fullness of the faith, the fullness of truth." Mom's letter, July 1999. Jesus left His church on earth. God does not do incomplete things. I was in a Protestant church about 5 years ago for a funeral, and it really hit me. They don't have the tabernacle. They have the Spirit of Jesus, but they don't have His real presence. You have been given special gifts, and it's your job to find out what the Lord wants you to do. If you want to know the truth, you need to spend some time with the Lord. But I had this thing. I was in Equinox in the MLM company, and it was full-time. It wasn't some part-time deal. And I went to lots of conferences where they had real dynamic speakers and personal development. So I had something in my head that made me very skeptical of this megachurch environment and of Christianity in general, because it reminded me of the environment I came from. Nothing wrong with being nice, but they were overly nice. And then they had testimonials, and that's how it was in the MLM. So I had these connection points that were like, man, how do I know this is real? Because Equinox wasn't real. I eventually decided I had to figure out which version of Christianity represented what Christ actually taught. So I started listening to debates because of my mom, and that's how I learned the Catholic faith. PK and I get married in 1999 outside the Catholic Church because, we were going to Fellowship Church. And that same time period, a show came out. For the first time in human history, a lady predicts and halves the Stigmata. And it was on Fox, and 29 million people watched this. It was called Signs from God, Science Tests Faith. My mom recorded a VCR tape of it and sent it to me. So now I was like, this is supernatural evidence for Jesus. The problem is there was no book, there was no website. At that time, I didn't know to look up stigmatists. I just didn't know about it. So early 2000, I made a decision. I'm gonna go back to the Catholic Church. My mom, she didn't work outside the house growing up. But when I left the house, she decided, I'm gonna go get a job. My dad had waited 15 years for her to retire. So finally in 2004, she retired. I remember talking to my mom for the last time. It was like New Year's. And she went on a vacation trip with my father down to Florida for retirement. She has a massive heart attack. She dies January 19th. I knew that Mom always prayed for everybody. I mean, everybody she ever met in her life, but I have to say it wasn't until Mom passed away and I was able to get all of her prayer journals to realize she was specifically praying for all of us to practice the Catholic faith. And this has been a journey that I had been on as well. So there was a book that came out in 2007 from the man who filmed the lady have the Stigmata and the Eucharistic miracles. I'm dying to find out what it all meant. And so for the first time in my life, I find out immediately about Fatima. I found out about Faustina and Divine Mercy. I found out about St. Padre Pio, the Stigmata, redemptive suffering, Eucharistic miracles. It was the cement of all the apologetic stuff that I'd learned. That's when I started going to daily Mass, Holy Hour, praying the Rosary. Eventually I said, okay, I think I need to do something with all this to show people that Jesus Christ is real, that He established a church. So ever since 2009, I've been traveling the United States, putting on parish missions, speaking at conferences. For years, I would travel with my wife and 3 kids. She homeschooled. And the greatest blessing in the whole world is all the time I got to spend talking about the passion of my mother, the passion I now have, and spending the time with my wife and kids. Over the course of a lot of years, I took every letter that I could find and I put it together in sequential order. And I just open it up, bring it to Holy Hour with me, and I would just see all the wisdom of Mom, truly. So several months ago, I sat down and I said, sure, I'll write a book. From the crack house to God's house, the power of a mother's prayer. Prayers work, but they don't always work in the way that we want them to work. But you can literally be at complete peace with your kids and your grandkids, even though they're away from the faith, if you will just do your part. I'm thankful for God, but very specifically for the Catholic Church and through the power of my mom and dad's prayers that would allow me to experience this and turn a horrible life because of bad decisions into a beautiful life.